I feel like they're my peeps.
We are your peeps.
Yeah. You're my peeps.
Was there any part that you ever got like really close to that you really wanted that, you know, now we look at like, oh, that's, you know, Julia Roberts and Pretty Woman, or, you know, like something that like we know where it was like almost yours, or something that you really wanted?
The only part I think I ever really wanted, I was just kind of disappointed, was Matrix, because I thought I was going to be doing that. And then for all sorts of reasons, I didn't do it. And so, and I was just kind of sad because I wanted to work with the Wachowskis some more. But, you know, there's a reason for everything.
You were going to be the Carrie-Anne Moss, like that role?
Trinity, yeah.
Wow.
I thought, but, you know, obviously they gave it to her. But I was sad at the time about that.
Well, I know sometimes we talk about Lenny Kravitz. There's another musical genius that we've had grace our presence, Prince. Talk to me about this, is this true? You're at NYU and Prince wants to meet with you and flies you to Minneapolis?
It's true. Want to meet me, flew me to Minneapolis. I had a fun night singing and dancing and hanging out. And then I said I didn't really want to do the movie because there was nudity in it. I was like, oh, I don't want this to be my first movie. For all sorts of reasons. And I had a show, I don't know what I was thinking, but I just didn't want to do it. Which is kind of, listen, where's Apollonia now? I don't know. I remember listening to the songs going, I don't really love these songs. I loved Purple Rain. I was like, oh my God, this is a genius. But I didn't think that was going to be, I didn't want that to be my first part in the film for some reason. I don't know. I instinctively thought this isn't the right move.
Well, what is it like when you're at NYU? You're an undergrad at this time, and like someone calls you or gets in touch with you and says Prince wants to meet with you. I mean, that must be somewhat surreal, no?
Well, I had been Jill Jones, who was singing with him when we were in high school, and I didn't know who he was. I was like, oh, I'm seeing this person. She goes, oh, I'm hanging out with Prince. I'm singing. And I'm like, what Prince? You know, so it was early on. So Jill, she was the one who called. I guess she told him about me, because he was looking for someone who could sing and dance and act. And she's like, I told Prince about you. He really, really, really wants to meet you. You need to come out here. I think you're perfect for this movie. And so it was more like, oh my God, I've got a show tonight, and I've got a show tomorrow night, and I've got class. I was such like a good student. I was such a nerd, but I was doing a play. And so I jumped off the stage and I changed my clothes. I got on the plane, got in my other outfit, had my night, and then I had to come back and do another play the next night. And he's like, why don't you just hang out? I'm like, I've got a show. He's like, why don't you get an understudy? I'm like, it's NYU. I don't have an understudy. I didn't want to let everyone down. I'm like, no, I'm the lead in this show. I can't not show up, you know? He was annoying.
And Prince was just like, just find someone. You're here.
Yeah, I think he was looking at me like, do you understand what I'm offering you here? And I was like, no, I have to go back to school. I mean, what was I thinking? Really, in retrospect, I wish I had at least hung out a couple of days and like sang. And I mean, you know, Prince is, you know, he's a genius. He's a genius. But I had a show to do and I didn't want to let everyone down. I thought I was being professional.
You were such a good student.
I was such a good student.
What was it like to hang out with Prince just for like one night?
Super fun. He was shy at first, but then once we started like, you know, talking and sing, I was just like, blah, 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 blah. Once we started laughing, it was all good. It was fun. Danced around, played piano and sang. I mean, it was a blast. I wish I could have another night like that with him. I mean, Prince is Prince, you know, he was incredible.
But you made it back to NYU for your show.
Yep. He had to drive me. He was mad. I'm like, you have to drive me right now so I can make my flight. You can read all about it. I have a whole chapter on that.
How is your book going? Tell us about your book.
I have to write it first. No, I've written like 7 chapters. It keeps changing forms. But there's definitely the Prince chapter in it because, you know, I think half of these stories are because people want to hear me tell these stories all the time. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to just like write them down so I don't have to talk about them so much, or before I forget. you know, because I do have a lot of stories. It's true. I'm in the process of it. I write and then I stop. I'm like, oh, who cares about this? And my friends are like, we care. You need to write this. I'm like, And I try to write something else and then I go back to it. I'm taking my time. Unless I have a deadline, I don't rush anything. So I know I need to get on it. I'm being lectured about it every day. Stop lecturing me. I know I need to write it.
You're like, who cares about this? And then you tell it to someone like me and you're like, oh my God. And like, were you wearing purple? And was Princess Car? I mean, I've been to Paisley Park and it's inside. It's great. I mean,
he picked me up in a purple limousine. And his house is purple on the outside, but inside it wasn't purple.
Yeah, that house, that back then at that time.
So you've been to that house?
Not to that house. I've been to like the new like Paisley Park inside. Now you could do tours and but I remember that purple house back from that time.
Yeah, that was his house. That was his personal house.
But like to your point, where is Apollonia now? But we still love Apollonia.
She was supposed to be her.
Are you the type that, you know, gets starstruck? Like you've been in the business forever, you live in New York, you know, do you get starstruck ever?
No, the only time I think I've ever gotten starstruck when I was still in college was the first time, probably the second time, but I was cooler then, when I met David Bowie. My knees literally went weak. I was like I think that's the only time I ever got starstruck.
That's a good one.
David Bowie, you know, I wasn't expecting him either. He turned around and I was like, oh my God. And he was so nice. I was trying to like be in a video that he was doing, but no one was at the house. So I remember knocking on the house. And when I went back, he turned around, it was him. I'm like, he was so kind and so sweet. And I tried to be cool, but like literally nothing came out of my voice. It was one of those moments. You know, it's also like 17 or 18.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was good.
Even like Black Star, which was his last, like the last album, was so good.
Listen, he's one of the great artists of all time on every level. You know, just his music, his art, his whole vibe, how he constantly changed. He never stayed in the same, you know, way. He kept evolving and just following his own muses. And I don't know, I just think he's one of the coolest artists of all times. Any day I'm like waiting for like something else to drop, which it wouldn't even shock me. It's like, oh, David from Beyond has like written a song about what's going on right now. I'd be like, great, been waiting to hear it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what his take on it would be.
Ugh.
This world that we live in. You've done a lot of theater. Is theater something you want to do more of? I mean, you live in New York.
Of course. And now, you know, listen, we need to talk about the movie I'm in right now.